What is up, everybody? Welcome to day 8 of the 365-day podcasting experiment from growingau.com. This is the All About How podcast, where we're talking about the success tips, the go-tos of the greats. We're breaking down success strategies, trying to improve ourselves as human beings, trying to improve ourselves as content creators, as entrepreneurs, trying to do whatever we can to increase the likelihood of us achieving our passions faster. So that's what we're talking about on this podcast. If that's something that seems interesting to you, go ahead and give us a follow. My name is John Knott, your host. You can find me on social media at John Knott AU. You can also follow Growing AU on social media at Growing AU, or check us out at our website, growingau.com. We have a very value-packed episode for you today. We have also a really awesome fun fact of the day at the end, so I would definitely stick around to listen to that. Let's roll the intro and jump into it. This is All About How. Let's get into it.
It's all about how in 2020 we're going to leave the world a better place than we found it.
So first thing I want to say is actually we did have a submission to the call to action that I put out a couple days ago, where basically I asked everybody who's listening to the podcast to send us an email to podcast@growingau.com and tell us something that you are passionate about that you would like us to discuss on the show. That could be anything from success tips to things that just get you really fired up and super jazzed, really anything that you think would be beneficial for our audience to hear about and talk about. So I asked anybody who was listening to go ahead and send us an email over to podcast@growingau.com, tell us where you're coming from, and tell us what it is you want us to talk about, as well as the social media, so we can shout you out here on the podcast. And we actually did have a submission asking us to talk about the new federal stimulus bill that was just passed to help with the outbreak. That is something we are going to talk about later this week, so stay tuned for that. I look forward to going into that submission. I want to thank the individual who did submit that. I will shout them out more in their particular episode. I do look forward to talking about it. And if you have not made your submission yet, definitely go over to podcasting@growingau.com and make that submission so we can talk about something that you want to hear about. All right, we're jumping into today's podcast right now. Here's what we're talking about. This is actually another podcast that was inspired by the Joe Rogan Show. Despite what I talked about yesterday with watching smaller accounts, this was something that I actually listened to a while back, before I even started the podcast, and I knew that this was something I definitely wanted to bring up, discuss, talk about on the show. So finally, this is the day 8, that we're finally getting around to doing that, and I do look forward and excited to it. This is actually yesterday's episode that was planned, but if you listen to yesterday's episode, you know that we changed it up a little bit. What we're talking about in this episode is something called a creative diet. Now, I do not remember the exact episode of the Joe Rogan Show that this was on. I do know it was under the 1,000, so if you want to go look in there, go ahead and be my guest, and if you find it, let me know. But on that show, they talk about what it is we're taking in, what it is we're listening to, what it is we're reading, what it is we're watching, and how that affects us as highly performing creative individuals, highly performing mental individuals, and highly performing successful individuals. And the way that Joe Rogan equates it is, if you wanted to be a high-performing athlete, you're going to have to consume a proper diet. So if you consume only chips, cake, pizza, other types of junk food, which cake, pizza, and chips are awesome. But anyway, that's besides the point. If you consume those things all the time, you don't balance it out with healthy stuff, then all likelihood you are not going to perform at your highest level. It kind of makes sense. If you're doing like Spartan races, if you're doing like triathlons, if you're doing 5Ks or half marathons or whatever, and all you've eaten for 3 months is chips, pizza, cake, and a little bit of soda, chances are you're not even going to get through a quarter of that race, if you're lucky to even get that far. So if you want to perform as a highly successful athlete, and this is something that was kind of close to me, being in high school, I ran cross country. You know, during cross country season, we all took it pretty seriously. You know, we weren't drinking soda, we weren't eating a lot of sugar, we were doing things to make sure that we were able to peak at our races. So I understand that from a very close to home standpoint, because that's a life that I lived for a long time. Also, I did some competitive shooting in my earlier days, and my team and I placed second nationally, and we also did pretty well in our state competitions as well. And that was something where during the months of practice, we weren't consuming sugar, we weren't consuming caffeine, we were doing everything we could to stable our bodies. And obviously sugar and caffeine make you shaky, and that's not what you want when you're going for competitive marksmanship. So those were all things we had to cut out of our diet. And so this is something that Joe Rogan talks about. He talks about how this is all things that can affect the creative process. And I think this is a pretty apropos episode considering what we talked about yesterday being creative industrialism. If you have no idea what that term is, definitely go ahead and check out yesterday's episode. But if we want to be highly creative individuals, or if we're trying to be, maybe it's we're into math and finance and rocket science and stuff like that, we're trying to perform at a high level, but all we take in is mental junk food, how can we expect to perform at the level at which we wish to perform? And so what I mean by that is very simple. Like, if all we watch on YouTube is I'm just throw out a couple things here, like prank videos, vlogs of random people, like reality vlogs, I'll call them. If we watch like video game Let's Plays, which I love, by the way. I mean, there's nothing wrong with a good video game Let's Play, don't get me wrong. There's nothing wrong with any of these. Or if we just watch some other more entertainment-based content, which I love all of, okay? I'm a big fan of stuff like Cinema Sins. I'm a big fan of stuff like The Breakdown and Wired and all those different channels and different vlog channels and stuff like that. I've watched all of them. I enjoy watching them. Good Skyrim Let's Play every now and again really brings back the feels. But I think we have to really look at it as if it was legitimate food that we were consuming in a mental diet, right? So there's nothing wrong with eating pizza. There's nothing wrong with eating cake. There's nothing wrong with eating chips. Where there's nothing wrong with watching video game Let's Plays, reading fiction novels, and watching movies. There's nothing wrong with that. It's all a really good time, like binge watching on Netflix. I'm sure we've all been there. I know I have. But if that is all that we are consuming, how are we going to then expect to perform at that high level? So I think what we have to do is begin to think of our mental consumption and our content consumption as a diet and really start to, I would say, kind of weed out what we watch based on how healthy it is for our mental diet. So like what I mean is, if we want to be highly creative, highly successful people, we need to be watching and consuming content that is highly creative and highly successfully based, if that makes sense. We need to watch content that is going to help us increase our creativity, increase our chances of success, increase ourselves as human beings, grow as an overall, person. Those are the things that are going to help us increase on our overall pursuit of our dreams. Whereas if we just consume the noise, so to speak, the entertaining stuff, we're not going to be able to perform at that high level, because that type of content doesn't necessarily incubate the mental level that is necessary to be highly creative. Again, nothing to say there's wrong with that content. I firmly enjoy that content, but it's just understanding that we have to take it in within spurts. And I actually found this really worked. I tested it out for myself for about a week to see if it would work. Really only taking in, informational podcasts, only reading like stuff about business and entrepreneurship and things that I'm, pursuing, and just kind of making sure that everything I was watching, I was learning something. And it could be I'm just watching something about like space, because that's something I'm into. It could be I'm just watching something about the outdoors, and because that's something I'm into, and I'm learning something about that topic. So it can be an entertaining topic as long as I'm learning something from it, right? This learning something that's going to also then help me improve as an overall human being. So I found it actually did work, and I found that a couple of the creative things, number one here on the podcast and on some other projects that I was working on, really did begin to improve. Not that the improvement was drastic, it just felt easier to say what it was that I was trying to say, because my mind was already in the mode of creativity and inspiration and education, because that's what I had been consuming for the better part of 48 to 72 hours before making that podcast or that video. So I find it actually really does help. And it also makes it more motivated to actually go get things done, because you see other people doing what it is you want to be doing, and then it makes it seem like, I want to go get that. I don't want to sit here anymore and watch this. I want to go do that. So it helps on that front too. So I really do think that there's a lot to be taken from this whole idea of a mental diet, and making sure that our mental diet is balanced and that it is healthy. So that's really kind of the gist of it. I don't think I need to drag this out any longer, but I do want to propose a challenge in this video. But I do want to propose a challenge in this podcast, a challenge that I am going to be going forward with, and it's going to be difficult, but I am going to go forward with it through the podcast so that, this podcast can keep me honest if I mess up. And also, it can help maybe inspire you to do the challenge along with us here on the podcast. And that challenge is, what is today? March 29th? Basically for a month. So April 29th, until that point, we can only consume healthy mental diet type content. So that is content that we are learning something from. That is content that is improving us as individuals. That is content that is somehow related to either our passions and our interests and stuff of that nature. So that is the goal for a month, to only consume highly elevating content. Now, I do want to preface myself just a little bit there. There needs to be time in your life for entertaining content, whatever that is, whatever it is that you like to watch, whatever it is that entertains you, there needs to be time left for that. So what I'm going to say is give it like 30 minutes a day, 30 minutes to an hour a day of just like, I'm going to breathe, I'm going to relax, I'm going to watch my show, I'm going to watch part of this movie, I'm going to do what I need to do and just relax and calm down. Because I do believe that you do have to take your mind out of that highly creative, highly active space every now and again, because it's really kind of exhausting to be up there all the time. And after a while, when you're up there for too long, you get really tunnel visioned on just, and it's hard for you to then think creatively because it's just so like, okay, I gotta get the next thing done, next thing done, next thing done. And it becomes about just checking things off the list and not doing things to the best of your ability. So I do believe you have to come out of that state. And I do believe the best way to come out of that state is by watching something that is just for fun, just for entertaining, because you want to enjoy it, because you want to relax, right? So I think relaxation is important. I would recommend personally watching something relaxing. Honestly, I think there's a little bit of points to either in the middle of the day or at the end of the day. I would say in the middle of the day is good because it gives you a break right in the middle. And then also it allows you to, if you're consuming content at the end of the day before you go to sleep, it allows it to be highly creative so that that's the mindset you wake up with. However, I would also say giving yourself an hour or two before you start getting ready for bed to consume just relaxation content in an effort to calm yourself down for the end of the day. Because I know that's something for me, and something we're actually going to talk about tomorrow is how to, manage the quiet time, for example, because that can be really hard for highly creative people. It could be a very loud and ultimately distracting time because the mind doesn't stop going. So I would recommend, the way I'm going to do it is I'm going to consume that content later at night when I'm trying to relax and calm down for the day. So we're going to do 30 days of only success-based content with 1 hour a day of relaxation content. So that's 30 days, success-based content, 1 hour a day, relaxation. And what that we're going to do is we're going to see at the end of that time and I'm basically just going to tell you how I feel. And if you guys are here, I highly suggest that you comment on these podcasts. If you want to go over to the website, do it there on the social media and talk about how it is you feel. If you feel that you've been more creative, because I want to see how this runs. I kind of want to run a little mini experiment in here. So I think it'd be kind of cool. I look forward to seeing mentally where I am at the end of 30 days. If it's drastically improved, that'd be great. If I'm just more in the mindset of creativity, that is exactly what I'm trying to achieve with that. So fingers crossed on that one. So I'm going to go ahead and start wrapping up this podcast right here. But before we go, I do have a fun fact of the day for you. So about 100,000 years ago, there was this ape, okay, a primate. And this primate was known by the name of Gigantopithecus. Now, Gigantopithecus has only been identified by a small selection of bones, but enough to know that the primate did in fact exist. And this primate was huge. Like, we're talking huge. 10 feet tall, 1,000 to 1,500 pounds, ginormous creature. Now, this creature did exist during the time that early man was starting to disperse. So, it has been theorized that Bigfoot, or early depictions of this large ape-like creature, could be attributed to early stories and early sightings of Gigantopithecus that have either made their way down through stories told by early man or have lasted and survived longer than we originally realized. Pretty cool. Pretty cool to know that Bigfoot did actually exist at one point. Whether or not he exists today, well, that has yet to be seen. I look forward to finding that out in the future. But guys, I hope you enjoyed today's podcast. I hope you enjoyed today's tip of the day. Go ahead and check us out at growingau.com. Go ahead and check us out at growingau on Instagram. For more, I look forward to talking to you all tomorrow. Hope you have a very highly successful day. This is John Knott signing off. Talk to you all tomorrow.